It's the new Mattel Firebolt gun. It never runs out of ammunition.
The ill-fated Hindenburg on her last flight sails over New York.
It's the party line!
The 1930s were a time of rapid change, where many things were once essential to daily life, but have since become completely obsolete. From party line telephones to wind-up gramophones, can you imagine living with these now outdated tools? Join us as we explore 25 things from the 1930s once necessary, now completely obsolete. In the 1930s, party line telephones were essential in rural areas, where individual telephone lines were scarce and expensive. A party line was a single telephone line shared by several households, making phone service more accessible.
Excuse me for interrupting. Do you realize this is a party line?
Somebody's asking if we know this is a party line. Well, sure we know it's a party line.
Each household had a unique ring pattern, like 2 short rings or 1 long ring, to identify their calls. When someone picked up the phone, they might hear a neighbor's conversation and had to wait until the line was free to make their call. Privacy was a significant issue, as anyone on the line could listen in on others' conversations. Despite these challenges, party lines were crucial for communication, especially in emergencies, and became a social connection point, where people exchanged local news and stories while waiting for their turn. How did people manage laundry before modern washing machines? Let's explore washboards next. Before electric washing machines became common, washboards were a key tool for doing laundry.
They still use tools from the 1900s, and they hand assemble all of their washboards, so they are good quality washboards. They're like the real deal when it comes to washboards, and that's where I got mine.
These boards, made of wood with a ribbed surface of metal or glass, were used to scrub dirt out of clothes. The process involved soaking clothes in soapy water and then rubbing them vigorously against the board's ridges to remove stains. This method required a lot of physical effort and could take an entire day to complete. Despite being labor-intensive, washboards were highly effective and were widely used in households around the world. Over time, electric washing machines revolutionized laundry by automating the scrubbing process. They saved time and reduced the physical strain involved in cleaning clothes, eventually replacing washboards entirely and making laundry a much easier task. Manual water pumps were a key tool for getting water in rural areas during the 1930s. Typically made of cast iron, these pumps required physical effort to work.
When you lift the handle all the way up on the pump and leave it, it will open that bottom leather check valve and let the water go back down the column.
By moving a handle up and down, people could pull water from wells or cisterns, making them essential in the absence of electric pumps or indoor plumbing. Found on farms and in small communities, these pumps supplied water for drinking, cooking, and washing. Despite their reliability, they required significant effort, with families needing to pump water multiple times a day, which was especially difficult during dry periods or for larger households. As electric pumps and modern plumbing systems became available, manual pumps were no longer needed. Today, they are primarily admired as historical artifacts or used as decorative items in gardens. Zeppelins revolutionized air travel by offering a luxurious and faster alternative to ocean liners in the 1930s.
Carl von Wiegand, correspondent on board, said in his dispatch that crossing the Atlantic from New York to Land's End took
These rigid airships, invented by Ferdinand von Zeppelin, used hydrogen gas to stay lighter than air. The Graf Zeppelin and the Hindenburg were the most notable examples of this innovation. With a remarkable ability to cross the Atlantic in just 43 hours, compared to the 5 days required by the fastest ocean liners, Zeppelins provided passengers with an unparalleled experience.
Headwinds, the Zeppelin had to ride out a thunderstorm along the Jersey coast before heading for the air station and nosing its way to the mooring mast.
They featured elegant dining rooms, cozy cabins, and even smoking lounges. Despite their comfort, their reliance on flammable hydrogen made them risky. The Hindenburg disaster of 1937 marked a turning point.
When the ship exploded, those aboard leaping for life from a flaming inferno, the actual crash of the Hindenburg, an airship destroyed in less than half a minute.
and interest in Zeppelins declined as airplanes advanced, offering safer and more reliable air travel. Zeppelins revolutionized air travel, but how did daily transport evolve? Let's explore the impact of tin lunch pails next. Tin lunch pails were a practical and widely used item for workers and schoolchildren during the 1930s.
Made me get this?
Yes.
Well, when I was your age, we didn't have soft lunch boxes. This is what we got. Now, do any of you guys know who this is?
Charlie Brown.
That's it!
These sturdy containers, made from metal, were designed to carry meals safely to work or school. They were especially valued by factory workers, miners, and farmers who needed durable options to transport their food. Each pail typically included a handle and a secure lid to protect its contents and keep them fresh. Some pails even included compartments to separate different types of food, making them convenient for daily use. Many were decorated with colorful designs or company logos, adding a touch of personality to their practicality. As time progressed, modern lunchboxes and insulated bags replaced tin lunch pails, offering better insulation, lighter materials, and easier portability. Starting a car in the early 20th century required significant effort, as hand-cranked engines were the norm. Drivers had to use a metal crank inserted into the front of the vehicle and turn it with force to ignite the engine. This task was not only exhausting but also dangerous, as engine backfires could cause the crank to kick back, leading to severe injuries such as broken arms or wrists. Despite these risks, hand cranks were vital, especially in rural areas where electric starters were not available. Electric starters, introduced in the 1910s, gradually improved the process, making it safer and much easier. By the late 1930s, most new cars were equipped with electric starters, eliminating the need for manual cranking and transforming the driving experience. Shortwave radios revolutionized communication and entertainment during the 1930s, connecting people across the world. By bouncing radio waves off the Earth's ionosphere, these radios received signals from distant locations, enabling listeners to hear international broadcasts.
80s, lows dropping into the 50s. Taste of fall running.
Institutions saying, here's how you can strengthen it. Then you're going to contribute stronger in your life.
This was a major breakthrough at a time when global communication was limited. They became a valuable source for staying updated on world events, particularly during wars and periods of political unrest. People could listen to news and music from various countries, gaining new perspectives on global affairs. Many households owned these radios, and enthusiasts participated in clubs or collected QSL cards sent by stations as proof of tuning in. Although highly influential, shortwave radios gradually disappeared as modern communication technologies like satellite TV and the Internet took their place. Shortwave radios connected people worldwide, but how did film evolve during the same period? Let's explore the rise of silent films next. Silent films were a vital part of the entertainment industry in the early 20th century. These movies, which lacked synchronized sound or spoken dialogue, used expressive acting, title cards, and live music to tell their stories. They gained global popularity and made stars like Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton household names. Among the most iconic silent films is City Lights, 1931, directed by and starring Chaplin. Despite the growing popularity of sound films, Chaplin believed silent cinema could express emotions more deeply. Another remarkable silent film is Chaplin's Modern Times, 1936, a humorous critique of industrial society. The introduction of sound in cinema, starting with The Jazz Singer in 1927, brought significant change.
Smiling at me, nothing but little blue signs. Do I see? Don't.
By the end of the 1930s, silent films were replaced by sound films as the industry standard. Sad irons, made of cast iron, were common tools for ironing clothes. The word sad comes from an Old English word meaning solid, referring to their heavy build.
Smaller handheld irons were known as sad irons. Sad is an Old English word for solid. Sometimes they were called gooses because they had a gooseneck shape for the handle.
These irons typically weighed between 5 and 9 pounds and were heated on a stove or an open flame. Using a sad iron was hard work because it needed to be heated repeatedly, and people usually required several irons to keep the temperature consistent. The process was physically demanding, since the heavy iron had to be moved back and forth to smooth out wrinkles. Although sad irons worked well, they carried risks, including burns from touching the hot metal. The invention of electric irons in the early 20th century slowly replaced sad irons, offering a more convenient and safer way to iron clothes. Canning jars were a key tool for preserving food in the 1930s. Made of glass, they were used to store fruits, vegetables, and other foods that could spoil. The canning process involved sealing the jars with metal lids and rubber gaskets, then heating them to kill bacteria and create a vacuum seal. This method allowed families to enjoy fresh produce all year long and was especially helpful during the Great Depression, when food preservation was crucial. There were different types of canning jars, like the popular mason jars,
of jelly jars in the size, but this is going to be your standard classic, and this is going to take a regular mouth,
which had a screw-top lid created by John Landis Mason in 1858. Other types included lightning jars, which had wire bales and glass lids, and atlas jars, known for their unique logos. These jars were practical but also valuable collectibles today, with some rare versions selling for high prices. Homemade soap was very important for many families, especially those living in rural areas. People made soap using basic ingredients like animal fats and wood ashes. The process involved boiling the fats and mixing them with lye, which came from the ashes. After mixing, the soap was poured into molds to harden.
And it does give a really awesome lather, like you could tell in the video. So feel free to use that recipe for yourself if you're wanting to make some soap.
Making soap at home took a lot of time and effort, and handling lye carefully was necessary because it could burn the skin. Even though it was a lot of work, homemade soap was crucial for cleaning clothes, washing dishes, and personal hygiene. It was a cheap way to make sure there was always soap available, especially during tough times like the Great Depression. With store-bought soaps and detergents becoming more common, making soap at home stopped being practiced. Making homemade soap was once a vital skill, but how did entertainment evolve in the home next? Let's explore radio consoles. Radio consoles were a key part of home entertainment in the 1930s. These large wooden cabinets contained powerful radios and sometimes included phonographs. Families gathered around the console to listen to news, music, and popular radio shows, making it a central part of everyday life. Designed to be both useful and decorative, radio consoles featured detailed woodwork and stylish designs that matched the home's decor. Well-known brands like RCA, Philco, and Zenith created models with advanced features, including motorized tuning and the ability to pick up shortwave and AM signals. As technology progressed, smaller and more portable radios, along with television, made radio consoles outdated. The size and cost of these bulky pieces made them impractical as new technologies emerged. Running boards were a popular feature on cars in the 1930s. They were narrow platforms on the sides of vehicles, helping passengers get in and out of cars that were higher off the ground compared to today's vehicles. This was especially helpful for women wearing long dresses and for children, making it easier for them to enter the car.
Had captured the imagination of the middle and working classes. People were being paid better wages.
Running boards were also used as extra space to sit or stand, and sometimes they were used to carry extra passengers when needed. As car designs changed and became lower to the ground, the need for running boards decreased. The 1929 Ruxton was one of the first cars designed without running boards, and by the mid-1930s, many car manufacturers stopped using them altogether. Slide rules were important tools for engineers, scientists, and students in the 1930s. These devices, made of wood or metal, had sliding scales that helped users do complex math like multiplication, division, and trigonometry. Before the invention of electronic calculators, slide rules were the main way to perform mathematical calculations.
The slide rule is used to solve mathematical problems and to solve them quickly.
To use a slide rule correctly, people needed skill and practice. Engineers and students carried them in special cases, which were sometimes attached to their belts. These tools were useful in many areas, like building bridges, designing buildings, and solving scientific problems. The speed and accuracy of slide rules made them essential for technical work. As electronic calculators became available in the 1970s, slide rules became outdated because calculators were easier to use and more accurate. Oil lamps were an essential source of light for many homes, especially in rural areas where electricity wasn't available. They used kerosene or other oils as fuel. The oil was poured into a container and a wick absorbed it. When lit, the wick would burn the oil, creating a steady flame.
So today we're going to be talking about oil lamps and hurricane lanterns. One thing that a lot of people wonder about oil lamps is
these lamps came in different designs, from simple glass ones to more decorative versions with fancy bases and shades. People used them for activities like reading, cooking, and socializing after dark. To keep the lamps working well, users had to trim the wick and clean the chimney to avoid soot buildup. With the spread of electricity in homes, oil lamps became less common because electric lights were brighter, safer, and more convenient to use. How did the Great Depression shape household items like glassware? Let's explore. Depression glass next. During the Great Depression, glassware known as Depression glass became a popular and affordable item for households. This inexpensive glass was mass-produced to offer families attractive tableware at a low cost.
Depression glass today, and especially a certain kind of depression glass that's called elegant glass.
Made from clear or colored translucent glass, it was commonly given away in cereal boxes or at movie theaters as promotional items. Depression glass came in various colors such as pink, green, blue, and amber, and featured popular patterns like American Sweetheart, Cameo, and Royal Lace. Despite being affordable, the glass had imperfections like bubbles and mold marks, which are now appreciated by collectors. The production of Depression glass slowed down after World War II as economic conditions improved and better quality glassware became available to the public. Bolt-action rifles were crucial for hunting and military use during the early 20th century. These rifles needed the shooter to manually work the bolt to load and remove cartridges, which made them more accurate and reliable than earlier guns.
With all of its military extemporanea stripped away because it's going to be a sporting rifle.
Popular models like the Remington Model 30 and the Winchester Model 54 were known for their strong build and precise shooting. Hunters favored these rifles because they could handle powerful cartridges, making them perfect for big game hunting. Military forces around the world also used bolt-action rifles, including the Mauser Carabiner 98K and the Springfield M1903, valued for their toughness and performance in different conditions. As semi-automatic and automatic firearms became more common, bolt-action rifles lost popularity due to their slower firing rates and less convenience. Sulfa drugs were groundbreaking in the 1930s and became crucial for treating bacterial infections. These were the first antibiotics to be widely used, successfully fighting diseases like pneumonia, meningitis, and blood poisoning.
These drugs came out before penicillin and changed infectious disease medicine virtually overnight. So in this video, we'll ask, how did sulfa drugs become a thing?
Discovered by German scientist Gerhard Domag, who won the Nobel Prize for his work, sulfa drugs, or sulfonamides, worked by stopping the growth of bacteria. This allowed the immune system to better fight the infection. And these drugs were seen as miracle drugs because they reduced the death rate from bacterial infections, which were common and deadly at the time. One of the most well-known sulfa drugs was Prontosil, which treated streptococcal infections. Despite their success, sulfa drugs had drawbacks, such as causing kidney damage and allergic reactions. While sulfa drugs revolutionized medicine, what changes did the automobile industry face? Let's explore the transition from wooden wheels to steel. Wooden wheels were commonly used on cars and trucks in the early days of automobiles. Made from strong woods like hickory,
it's a time-honored manufacturing process that blends woodworking and restoring some of the most unique antique vehicles.
These wheels were known for being durable and able to handle the rough roads of the time. They were lighter and more flexible than metal wheels, which made them a popular choice for early vehicles. Despite their advantages, wooden wheels needed regular care to keep the wood from drying out or cracking. Over time, steel and wire wheels took over because they were stronger and required less maintenance. By the mid-1930s, most car manufacturers had switched to steel wheels, making wooden wheels less common. Despite their decline, wooden wheels are still valued by collectors and vintage car enthusiasts for their historical importance and craftsmanship. Chamber pots were important household items, especially in homes without indoor plumbing. These portable containers served as toilets during the night or when the weather was bad, so people didn't have to walk to an outdoor toilet. They were usually made from materials like ceramic, metal, or enamel, and were kept under the bed or in a special cabinet called a commode. Using a chamber pot was a normal part of everyday life.
Dining room chair also functions as a commode.
In the morning, the contents were poured into an outdoor toilet or a waste area. While practical, chamber pots weren't the cleanest option and needed to be cleaned regularly to avoid bad smells and germs. The invention of indoor plumbing and bathrooms in the mid-20th century made chamber pots unnecessary and outdated. Wind-up gramophones were important for playing music at home. They worked by using a hand-cranked mechanism to wind a spring, which powered the turntable to spin records. Unlike modern electric record players, they didn't need electricity, so they were perfect for homes without power. These gramophones were placed in wooden cabinets and had large, decorative horns to make the sound louder. Well-known brands like His Master's Voice and Columbia made them famous for their quality and design.
We'll have our own gramophones. We each play a record. One of us has to remember to wind them all the time. And it's not scratching and mixing. We just each play a record.
Wind-up gramophones played shellac records, which were more delicate than today's vinyl. While they had a charming design, the sound quality was not as good as modern devices and the records could break easily. As electric record players and radios became available, wind-up gramophones disappeared by the mid-1900s. Typewriters were vital for offices, writers, and students in the 1930s. These machines made it easier to type documents quickly and neatly, offering a big improvement over handwriting. Popular brands at the time included Underwood, Remington, and Royal, known for their durability and performance. Most typewriters of this era were manual, requiring the user to press keys that struck an inked ribbon, transferring letters onto paper. They were usually built into strong metal or wooden cases and had the well-known QWERTY keyboard. Some models, like the Remington Noiseless, aimed to reduce the loud noise produced while typing. Despite being essential, typewriters had their drawbacks, such as being heavy, needing regular upkeep, and making it difficult to fix mistakes. With the rise of electric typewriters and later computers, manual typewriters became outdated. Typewriters revolutionized the way people worked, but what came next in technological advancement? Let's explore the impact of vacuum tube calculators. Vacuum tube calculators were groundbreaking technology used for complex calculations in science and engineering. These early electronic calculators used vacuum tubes to carry out arithmetic operations, making them much faster than mechanical calculators.
But isn't it just so super cool, though? I think it is.
A key example was the Atanasoff-Berry computer, created in 1939, which utilized vacuum tubes to solve linear equations. These calculators were large and bulky, sometimes filling entire rooms. They required a lot of power and produced significant heat, so they needed special cooling systems. Despite these difficulties, they allowed for more advanced and quicker computations than anything available at the time. The introduction of transistors in the 1950s quickly replaced vacuum tube calculators. Transistors were smaller, more reliable, and used less power, making vacuum tube calculators outdated. Ice delivery tongs were important tools for icemen who delivered ice to homes and businesses. Before refrigerators, people used ice boxes to store food and relied on icemen to supply the ice. The tongs were usually made of metal with sharp, curved ends to grip the ice tightly.
These were used to move blocks of ice.
Icemen used the tongs to lift large blocks of ice which could weigh up to 100 pounds. They carried the ice on their shoulders, protected by thick pads to prevent frostbite. The job required a lot of strength and stamina as icemen carried the ice through narrow hallways and upstairs to reach customers' ice boxes. The development of electric refrigerators in the mid-20th century made ice delivery and the need for tongs no longer necessary. In the 1930s, many fake medical devices were sold, claiming to offer miraculous cures without any scientific evidence. These devices took advantage of new technologies like electricity and radio waves. One popular device was the radium water revigator, which promised to add radium to water for health benefits, even though radiation was dangerous. Another was the electromassage machine, which used electric currents to supposedly treat various health issues. Phrenology devices, such as the psychograph, claimed to read personality traits by measuring bumps on the skull. But these were based on false science.
Believe it or not, it wasn't until the late 1930s that people gave up on this form of medical quackery.
The spectrochrome used colored lights to treat illnesses through a method called chromotherapy. Despite being widely used, these treatments did not work and sometimes caused harm. The rise of organizations like the Food and Drug Administration helped expose and reduce the use of these devices.